Hey everyone, this is Christy Bertram from OESD and embroideryonline.com, and I want to show you a quick video about how to do a baby onesie. We had a question on our Facebook page about how you get this done, and it's a lot easier to show you than it is to tell you. So I thought I'd show you some pictures and walk you through the steps. If you've not ever done a baby onesie before, it might seem a little bit daunting, but once you see how it's done, you'll find that it's something you can tackle without any trouble. The first thing that we're going to do when we start to do an embroidery design is we want to mark the placement of that design. So we want to use a water-soluble marker. You can use a chalk marker, whatever your preference, but you're going to mark the center point of that design so that when you go to place it on your machine, you'll know where that embroidery design is going to go. Now this next step is really important. We're going to add a piece of stabilizer to the back of this onesie. So we've turned it inside out. You can see we're working on the back side of the front of the onesie, but we've got it turned inside out. And we're going to put a piece of stabilizer across the main area where we will be embroidering. And I like for this piece of stabilizer to actually go out quite a bit further than the embroidery I'm actually going to do. When we do this, you want to attach that to that baby onesie. So what I've used here is this is a soft mesh cutaway stabilizer, and I've found one that is a fusible. So we're using a fusible mesh cutaway stabilizer. You could also use a regular mesh cutaway stabilizer and spray it with a temporary spray adhesive and then place it onto the onesie. What I really like about using that iron-on is that I know that once I've pressed that onto the back of this little onesie that it's not going to go anywhere. This is a really important step because this is what keeps that fabric from bunching up and from shifting during embroidery. So it really is going to make sure that you get a really good quality sew out. And it really does need to be attached to the fabric. Now the next thing I'm going to do, because my onesie is kind of small and it's hard to hoop, rather than actually trying to hoop the fabric and stabilizer together, what I'm going to do is hoop another piece of that mesh cutaway stabilizer. Now mine does happen to be that fusible, so I hooped this with the fusible side up. That way when I put my embroidery onto it and after I finish the embroidery, that fusible is facing the fabric and I can fuse it to the back of that embroidery. So I've got it fusible side up here. So I've got that hooped, and now how do I get my embroidery, my fabric, onto this stabilizer to embroider it? Well, what we're going to do is spray this with a temporary spray adhesive. Once I've sprayed that with a temporary spray adhesive, now we can place that onesie onto that stabilizer. And what you can see is I've actually folded this onesie in half at that center point, and that makes it a little bit easier for me to line it up. Ideally, what you would want to do is to actually use the template that comes with your embroidery hoop to make sure you're getting that where you've marked on your onesie directly into the center of your hoop. Now remember, it doesn't have to be exactly perfectly in the center because you could always change the position of the design once you get it to your machine. However, you do want to at least make sure that it's straight and parallel. Another thing I do that helps me keep everything straight and parallel is I keep it on a gridded board. So I use a gridded cutting board and then align that hoop to it. Now, I've placed half of this and we're going to open it up and smooth it out so that it's got the whole half. And now the next step is to scrunch this up so I can see the area I'm actually embroidering on. It's real tempting to pull the neck down so that you're seeing the fabric and that you're actually sewing through the opening of the neck of the project. And let me tell you from experience, that is not a great idea. What you want to do is to open it from the bottom up because there's a much larger opening there. If you pull it from the neck down, you try to embroider through the neck hole, it's much more likely that that fabric's going to end up getting caught under the needle that you don't want there. So open up the bottom of the onesie, pull it up so that you're exposing the area that you're going to embroider on. So this is all the excess fabric you're seeing around the outside, and this part in the middle is where you're actually going to do your embroidery. Now you can see here I'm showing you that this is pulling it up from the bottom, not from the neck, but from the bottom. Okay. Now once you've got that open area where you're going to do your embroidery, you're going to put it onto your machine. Now, another very important point of doing a baby onesie is this needle should be a ballpoint needle. Make sure you're using a ballpoint needle. For a onesie of this weight, which is just kind of an average t-shirt weight, I would use a size 75, which is an 11 ballpoint needle. You need to use a ballpoint because if you use a sharp needle, it will actually break these little fibers, and that knit, when that fiber is broken, will actually cause a little hole, and it can cause a run, just like you would see in your stockings. So you want to use a ballpoint needle because instead of breaking those little fibers, it's going to push them to the side. A size 75 will make sure you're not putting too big a hole into the fabric. Okay, next step is that we are going to do the embroidery, but as you can see, you've got this fabric all around here. So as you're doing your embroidery, this is not the kind of project that you want to start at sewing and then leave the room. You really need to babysit your baby onesies, because if that fabric shifts around during embroidery, it's going to go right under that needle, and the front of your onesie is going to be stitched to the back. So make sure you sit with it so that you can make sure that this fabric stays out of the way while you're doing the embroidery. So you can see here we've started doing the embroidery. I'm kind of watching it. Another little tip, don't stick your fingers here as you're holding that fabric out of the way. Use a chopstick or some other tool so that if by chance you get a little too close to the needle, you at least problem that you have is a broken chopstick and not a needle through your finger. So make sure you're keeping that out of the way, but don't stick your fingers under there. Okay, so we're continuing to do the embroidery, making sure that that fabric stays out of the way. And now the embroidery is complete. So you can see that we're looking still through the bottom opening. The embroidery is done. Next thing I need to do is trim these little jump stitches. I usually find it easier to trim them while it's still in the hoop, but it's your preference. You can take it out of the hoop first if you want. Then we're going to take it out of the hoop and cut the stabilizer around the design, being very careful not to cut the fabric, but cut the stabilizer around the design. Now, if you're doing this for an actual baby, you might want to add a piece of a tricot stabilizer. So this is a knit tricot stabilizer that's fusible. We're putting it fusible side down, and we're putting it over the entire embroidery. And what this does, this knit tricot is very soft, and so the little stitches that are on the back of the embroidery never touch the baby's skin. Instead, this tricot stabilizer is what's actually going to touch the baby's skin. So that way they won't be irritated by it, and they'll wear it long enough that you can show it off. So now you can see we've got our little embroidery design done, and we're ready to share this onesie with the sweet little one that's going to wear it. Hey, if you have any questions, feel free to post them to our Facebook page, and we would love to share more ideas with you. Thanks.